Hey everyone, welcome back to Make It Happen Mondays, where we talk about sales, business, entrepreneurship, personal growth, mental health, and everything in between with guests who I truly respect and I think make a positive impact on the world around us. And today's guest is Vince Beese. He is a fractional CRO and the author of Red Zone Selling, which is what we got into in this conversation. He helps early stage startups and fast growing sales organizations streamline their GTM motion to increase win rates by focusing on the plays that actually move the ball. From building scalable sales foundation to driving deal momentum, Vince equips teams who qualify faster, sell smarter, and finish strong. So this was a fun one. This is if you like sales, you're gonna like this one, especially enterprise sales, by the way. There's a lot of admittance in this conversation of why I am not an enterprise seller and why I don't have the patience or the skills to. But he really focuses on this because this is where his sweet spot is. And so we go through his background and how he got to it. And it's funny, we both went to the University of Maryland. He graduated a few years before me, but there's some commonalities here with him getting into broadcasting and me getting into sports marketing. And then both of us realizing, woof, don't want to do this. And then finding our way into sales. And, you know, I had a whole list of questions that I was going to flow through his background and his history and each one of his jobs. But in the prep for this, we just started talking about how the art of sales, we both believe, is kind of lost, and how we've way over processed it and way over scienced it. And for me, you know, if you've listened to me for a while now, you know, look, I always say that I think sales should be more of a science than an art. But man, if we swung that pendulum too far, and I think the art, the essence of sales is really lacking these days from what I'm seeing. And so we dove into that right out of the gate. And, you know, about what he thought the difference between, you know, the elite sellers and everybody else. And it comes down to closing. It comes down to, do you enjoy that? Do you enjoy friction? Do you hunt for it or do you avoid it? And the best sales reps hunt for it. Right? We talked about, you know, a lot of things I was trying to deal with or, you know, understand about my own process to make sure that I got a different perspective. For instance, you know, I disqualify a lot as opposed to qualify. Like once you're qualified and you kind of fit the mold, if you will, I start asking questions to disqualify you because my theory is you're going to figure that out eventually. So I might as well figure it out up front. So I validated that with him and his perspective on that. He talks a lot about how we are so fixated on the top of the funnel. And that's gives us like false confidence with a big pipeline, right? Where we really should just be focusing on the ones that matter. And then, you know, talking about that foundation that I think we've gotten away from and how do we get back to it as a sales organization. That was an interesting perspective. And then obviously his red zone selling. So he's got these yellow zone, green zone, red zone, and some frameworks that anybody can use to apply pretty easily to move the deals through the stages or get out of them altogether. And so really interesting conversation, all about sales all the time. So if you're an enterprise seller, you want to get better, even if you're kind of mid-market or SMB, you know, and you want to move upstream eventually in your career, you're going to like this conversation. So hopefully you enjoy the conversation as much as I did. Let's make it happen. Vince Beese, what's going on, my friend? Welcome to the Make It Happen Monday podcast.
Hey, John, how you doing? It's been a bit.
Yeah, it has. It has. It's as when you reached out with the new book, which we're going to get into here, I was very eager to take a look at it and get you on here to see what you're seeing out there. Because as we were prepping for this, we were talking about the lost art of sales. And I think that's a lot behind this book, right?
Yeah. And by the way, the key for me of writing a book was don't read other books.
That's a good one. Yeah, well, that's kind of for me. It's always been. I mean, you know, like I wrote my daughter that children's book, right? And that was kind of my answer when people were like, because everybody's like, "When are you going to write a book?" I'm like, "What the am I going to write?" Like, I don't know. Like, I don't like reading books. So I'd kind of be a hypocrite if I wrote.
You told me that. You're like, "I'm not going to read it. You can send it to me."
Like, if you give me the clip notes, like, good, right? But I do believe that, you know, you don't want to. To your point, like, you don't want to be clouded by everybody else's judgment or perception. It's like, I just want my original thought to be here, and it is what it is, right? So it's a labor of love in a lot of ways. Awesome. Well, Vince, to get the audience a little bit more familiar with you, as you know, we always try to do the origin stories here about where you grew up, like kind of what caught the bug, if you will, parents, like, you know, those type of things that I can't read on LinkedIn. So give us a little perspective of where you're coming from.
Born and raised in New Jersey.
Yep. Jersey Shore. We'll get there.
Huge Giants fan, huge Mets fan, was a huge Rangers fan, but I moved to the Carolinas. So now I'm a Carolina Hurricanes fan, which they've been solid for the last bunch of years. Went to the University of Maryland. We've got that in common. went for broadcasting, John. I wanted to be in broadcasting. I specifically wanted to be a sports broadcaster. And I thought I had it nailed when I was at Maryland. I internshiped at the CBS affiliate in Washington, D.C. for a gentleman named James Brown. You might know him on the NFL show. I was his intern for a year. I'm like, oh man, I'm in sport. I'm going to dominate this industry. Long story short is I realized like I might need to move to like Jackson, Mississippi or something. And I'm like, I ain't breaking in New York or whatever. And so I had some minor success in broadcasting. I was a Metro traffic reporter in Washington, D.C. The best job I ever had was a radio disc jockey on a modern rock radio station. That was really cool. But like those things were cool, but they didn't pay well. And your longevity wasn't very long. So like most sales leaders and salespeople, I stumbled into sales. I answered an ad for an ad that said like, are you sports minded? Are you this and that? I'm like, yeah, that's me, man. It was for selling advertising in a magazine. Oh. And so, John, I went into it with like, I didn't give a shit because I needed some money. They paid a little bit of money. And because I think my attitude was like, I'm not doing this long, I didn't take it serious, but I actually listened and watched by making small changes, by cold calling. By the way, we didn't have email and all that. I'm an old guy. By picking up the yellow pages, like I recognized like, wow, this selling thing is just really like starting a conversation, finding out what their needs are. And then if it makes sense, talk about how the magazine can help them grow their audience. And I was like, this isn't that hard. And I started having success closing deals. I said, well, maybe this sales thing is a thing for me. And that's really kind of the catalyst for me is like, I didn't want to do it, never really thought about it. And it just kind of happened.
So let's talk about that as it relates to natural born sales professionals. Like what's your take on natural born like abilities, if you will, because they're always a natural born sales rep. And I think a lot of people conflate that with just being good to talk, whatever. What's your perspective on that?
I think like an elite athlete, I think there's some truth in that. I think there's some people that are just naturally better at and more comfortable and authentic in their own skin to sell to other human beings. But I think the distinction for me is in natural is we don't talk about this enough. Is this person a closer or not a closer? People can start conversations. People can ask the right questions. That doesn't make you a closer. So it's just like a home run hitter. You can't be a singles hitter and turn into a home run hitter. You either are going to be an excel at closing or you're probably going to be average or below average. And that's the thing we'll maybe jump into later on win rates. It's like, I think there is a natural born instinct to want to close. Like my job at the end of the day is either to close this deal one way or another, right? That's it. It's not to make a new friend. It's not to create another opportunity or get another meeting scheduled. At the end of the day, I have something that they need. Let me help them make that decision.
So yeah, we're jumping ahead a little bit on where my talk track went, but I'm curious here. So with all the training on, like, if you really look at the distinction of like real true sales reps who can close versus kind of everybody else who just manages a process to a certain degree, there's training on closing techniques and all this other, and get a bunch of, getting to yes from a negotiation standpoint, get all these little yeses. So, I mean, just like a home runner, a singles hitter can't really be a home run hitter if they don't have the muscle. You know what I mean? Like David Ortiz, he was a huge specimen. He could crush it. Whereas, Ichiro, he was a tiny little guy. Like he hit some home runs, but he wasn't like he was never, but Ichiro was still an all-star at baseball. So like how can somebody who might have the skills to follow the process, to understand, to be curious, like some of those things that are hard to teach, how do they become that closer, if you will, if that's not something that, and one more piece of context here. We were just talking before this, Jeff Hoffman, he's my mentor, right? He fucking loves the close. Like he legitimately gets off when he just knows the exact, like ask that question right in front of a group of people and feels that person go, holy shit, I can't believe you just asked that. And then they say, yes, shit. Yeah, Jeff, you're right. Like he lights up like a Christmas tree when that happens. I don't. I love close. I like closing because of the outcome, but to me, it's a logical progression to get there. But I don't get jazzed up about like fucking saying something to get somebody to go ding. You know what I mean? So where is that for you?
I think it's this, and it can't be taught.
Yeah,
I'm talking about a real top-notch elite closer. You have to embrace friction right? You have to just want it. You want to get to some uncomfortable position. So that means you're not afraid to ask the questions that are probably going to get the no's and stuff you don't like. And that also means you're probably, if you do that friction and get into an uncomfortable position, you're going to be very proactive in getting to objections faster because you're not afraid at the end of the day of hearing no. No means, now I have an opening to start selling. I know where their position is. Now I can anchor to the no. Where if I don't know or maybe or whatever, that's all bullshit. Tell me no. Tell me to go fuck off. I'm cool with that. Let's go. But you're right. Your friend Jeff, like, you have to have that passion about it. It doesn't mean you can't close deals if you don't. Don't get me wrong. You still be very good at it. But the guys that are elite guys or gals, right, they love friction. And no fear.
And that's for me, like, I don't mind friction at all because I think it's from Boston, East Coast. Like, yeah, just tell me no. I don't give a shit. Like, let me move on. And that's why we were talking again right before we kicked this off with, the pipeline. Everybody focused on top of funnel, but nobody focused on this. And to a certain degree, I agree with the top of funnel because it just gives you more at bats. But for me, it puts me in a position where I want your business. I don't need it. So therefore, I don't give a shit whether you close or not, right? I'm genuinely trying to make sure that we both win here and we both move forward here. So I don't give a shit about the friction because my pipeline's big enough for me to not fucking care, right? But on the other hand, but I don't get jazzed up about that close. So help, like, where are you on pipeline development and wanting friction versus putting yourself in a position where the close, I don't want to say doesn't matter, but if the client says no because it's not a good fit and you lose, it's like, okay, whatever. I'm on to the next one.
Well, let's distinguish here. Let's talk about enterprise specifically, so we stay in that same vernacular. I think sometimes too much of a top of the funnel pipeline is a crutch. You're an enterprise seller. Like, I've got 12 deals to work, so I'm not sweating it. And I think, honestly, you need to feel pressure every day, and you have to be able to handle the pressure. And it's one of the things we'll get to and I talk about in the book is the mentality of being in sales. Like, it's not an easy job, and there's a tremendous amount of pressure. And if I feel as a salesperson, I have a really strong top, I think I have a strong top of the funnel. That means I'm ready thinking that, boy, I know I can convert these 12, maybe 8 of them into opportunities, and I can take 8. They start doing some mental math. When I think about 12 at the top, I think that there's probably one good one. That's all I really care about. If I can get that one good one to close at $500,000, $1 million, that's what I want. So I think, again, what you have to start with to increase your win rate is your acceptance. We're too accepting of something that's a lead to an opportunity. And that's the big fundamental change. And I get why it happens. If you're a seller and you're not hitting your number today, which is a pretty scary environment we're in right now, you're going to make up some stuff. But it's up to the sales leader to say, I understand, team, what's going on, right? I don't want you to make up opportunities. Here's our fit criteria, and I only want deals that are this fit criteria. So I think, again, it goes to, like, the elite closers just want to win the winnable, right? They're not stupid. I'm not going to chase something that's bad. I'm going to try to win the winnable. And what does that look like where I am, right?
So let me unpack this a little bit with this fit criteria thing. And I'm going to dumb it down to BANT. Okay. And I know we're talking enterprise, but a lot of the reason I hate BANT, the reason I hate MEDDIC, the reason I hate a lot of these qualification criteria shit is because when followed too strictly, they disqualify far more than they would ever qualify. Like, for me, as an example, I don't give a shit about any of BANT other than need. If, like, there is a genuine need in this situation, you might not see it yet, but if there's a genuine need, then I should be able to uncover budget. I should be able to get to authority. I should be able to expedite a timeline as a reasonable sales rep here. So when you talk about fit criteria, how strict, I guess, or what does that framework look like so that it's not too disqualifying?
Even at enterprise, John, when I was leading teams, I make it very simple, common sense. Do they have a pain that we can solve in a time frame that we care about? If they do, that's an opportunity. If they don't, hold off onto it. And the most important thing is, I'll add to that, is their urgency to solve that problem. Yeah, we got this big pain, blah, 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 but we can't get till mid 26. Well, there's no urgency for solving this pain. What is that? That's not real pain. So you, as a seller, either need to help them understand what the pain is tied to urgency, something I call value selling, meaning it's either about time when they want to close, the value they see into it, or the ROI. So time, I got to get this done by end of the year. Value, I'm anchoring to, we got a big implementation that has to get done. That's tied to this other thing. So I need to get done. And ROI, I'm going to be saving money or making money. If you anchor to one of those things and tie it to your fit, you're now controlling the deal, right? But you can't artificially make those things up. Those three things are based on the buyer's need tied to the value and the urgency they equate to that, right?
Do you think anybody believes ROI anymore?
That's a fair question.
And the reason I ask, as you think about it, is there's, I don't know if you've read Jolt Effect, right? Challenger sale, challenger customer, Jolt Effect, and how it's not indecision anymore. It's no decision. It's the risk factor and all this other stuff. And my contention right now is that people sell this ROI, right? Cost of inaction, I think, is real, right? That's challenger sale. But cost of no action, right? The fear factor, I think that people don't believe like ROI anymore because it's a promise for future results, right? Like, hey, if you do this today, then sometime in the future, you're going to get an ROI to this. But because things are moving so fast, AI is basically changing the game daily that it's kind of hard for me. I don't know about you, man. I can't look 6 months out and have any type of confidence at all that I know what this world's going to look like in 6 months.
True.
So how do we address ROI in this
I think it's got to be reframed. And I call it, and I talk about this, it's about the business case. Call it ROI for the shortened version of it. But if you're not an enterprise helping your buyer figure out what the business case is so they can bring it up, as we know, to the people that have to approve and sign and all that stuff, and you're relying on them to build what the business case is tied to saving some money, increasing productivity, or whatever it is that they believe in that this will do, then you're missing a huge opportunity to distinguish yourself and shorten the sales cycle. So again, yes, ROI, I think most buyers be like, whatever, what are you going to tell me? It's 10X, 20X. It's the same thing as we see someone on LinkedIn that says 10X your pipe. Come on, man. Like
Grant Cardone. Yay. Douche.
So I think you're right. I think it's fair for sellers not to call it ROI, but talk about, hey, have you put together a business case? Do you need help putting together? I've got this formula based on your business that I think we could start with and build from there. But it comes back to like we talked about before, it's like closing and selling. It's like the art of selling is missing, right? Like that's not in a medic or med pick. It's like reading the situation in front of you and understanding what their needs and what's important to them. Yes, important to follow process every day, but you got to be able to think. Patrick Mahomes calls a play. All of a sudden, two linebackers are coming at him. Do you think he gives a shit that the one wide receiver was running a long route? No, he's looking for the slant. He wants to throw behind them, right? But he doesn't. He happens instinctively because he practiced enough and he knew what plan B was going into that play. And that tied to what we're talking about of being able to have the conversation with somebody. And I know if I say the ROI word to this guy, John, he's going to say, bullshit. This guy doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. And it could be industry related. Like if you're selling to an industry that's saturated by people like me, and I'm throwing out terms like that, guess what? You're just like everybody else.
Totally. So two-part question on this one. One is with the, you say that people focus, and I agree with you, that their pipelines are too fat in a lot of ways because there's not real deals in there. I have this approach of disqualifying. Like once you're kind of quote unquote look like a duck, smell like a duck, you know what I mean? Like, all right, you're kind of in that there's a need and I can help. My approach then is I start asking you questions to effectively disqualify you, to find out all the reasons you should not be doing business with me, because my philosophy is you're going to figure those out eventually. So I might as well bring them up in the first place. Now, Jeff, and I'm going to bring up Jeff, the artist, right? I'm more the scientist. He's the artist. He's like, fuck that, man. That is not my job. He's like, my job is like, you're going down the path and I'm trying to lead you down that path. And my job is not to get in your way. So I'm going to kind of bring you down there. And well, who am I to bring up stuff that why you shouldn't do business with me? That's your problem if you can't figure that out. Right. So there's that line of like, oh man, but I understand his point. But for me, it's always serviced me to just be like, okay, let's talk about why you shouldn't do this. Like, why wouldn't you just do this internally? Why wouldn't you do this? Because those are all the questions that they're asking behind closed doors anyway. So where are you on qualifying versus disqualifying?
I'm right in between you and Jeff. And my favorite question to ask early in the process, hey, John, we've talked about this now. I think you see the value in what we provide, but I'm curious, what does it cost you or the company by doing nothing? So if we don't solve this problem, and if they don't have an answer for that, guess what? There ain't no urgency, my friend.
Yeah.
So I really let them get themselves off the hook and then pivot on how they respond to that. Oh, I don't know. It's a great question. Help them figure it out. Now we're getting back to the business case. Wouldn't you say that would cost you hiring 3 more people? Well, I guess you're right. You know what I mean? Like, but I like your approach, to be honest. If I was leaning one way or another, I like that. Let's disqualify, because here's the other reason why that's very valuable. People don't like to be told no, meaning, I don't know if I want to work with you yet. Can I use one example? We were in a huge pitch off years ago selling to Yahoo. This is when Yahoo was the shiz. Think of 2005-ish, 6-ish. And they had said us, because they wanted very custom needs for what we were doing. And quite frankly, we didn't have the chops to do it. And so they'd said something, and I just stopped the meeting. I said, whoa. I said, we collectively as a team here today, our executive team, our sales team, we haven't decided yet whether we want to move forward with you yet. They didn't know what this is. Yahoo and Silicon Valley and San Jose. Dude, you had to look at their faces when I said this. Like, you're telling us that you haven't. Yeah, we understand. And I said, because with all due respect, we understand your requirements. We understand how demanding you're going to be. We understand the constraints you're going to put on our business. You might actually hurt our business. So we came here to figure out if we should partner with you, if we can partner with you. And they said, can you give us 5 minutes? We all left the conference room. We went outside, and I was like, what are they going to say? I said, I know what they're going to say. They're going to say, we found our partner. And they didn't say it in that meeting, but they did choose us because we were the only ones that said we would do what they told us to do. But that goes back to what we was talking about. Fear, no fear. Like, I don't give a shit. We're probably not going to win this anyway.
Exactly.
It's a long shot.
Or to your point, we're going to get buried if we do. And so that's even worse if we did than if we lose it.
And in honest, we had conversations at the executive team level about the deal. We really did. I wasn't making it up. It wasn't a con. It wasn't a let's test them. We really talked about if we could even take this business.
Yeah, I have a.
It was fun. That was fun to say that. When
it's such a reverse psychology, right? It's like, that's why I always say, look, I do want your business. When I do that and I pull back, I'm like, look, I want your business if it's right for both of us, but I don't need your business. So with the bullies and the big companies trying to pick on little vendors and all this other stuff, it's like, you can be you. I remember Pandora called me up this was a while back when I was like crushing it. Salesforce was my biggest client, and murdering it. Right. And, Pandora was really big, like when it probably 2017-ish, 16. And they called me up. They're like, hey, and it was an assistant. And she said, hey, we'd like you to bid on this training that we have. And I'm like, sure, great. Tell me, like, I'd love to talk to some of the executives, understand what the needs are. And she's like, well, no. The first meeting is out in Oakland at our office. And that's where you'll learn about the requirements and everything else. And I said, so let me just make sure I'm clear. You want me to fly to Oakland? I live in Boston, by the way. You want me to fly to Oakland on my own dime, take 2-3 days out of my schedule to go meet, not even knowing that what you need is something I can help with. And then after that, like, I get to, and she's like, yeah. I go, okay, well, I'm going to respectfully decline the offer. And she goes, excuse me. And she literally said, we're Pandora. And I said, yeah, I'm John Barrows. I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. I'm like, I don't give a shit. There's no fucking chance. I'm like, I know you work for a big organization. That money that you're talking about comes directly out of my personal pocket. So you're asking me to spend about $2,000 in 3 days of my time that I could probably make 50 grand doing for a hope that what you need is what I have to offer. I go, I thank you very much. But I go, look, I'll be in California on this date if we can make something like that work.
Or we could do a phone call.
Right? And sure as shit, I got an email saying, if you're going to be in town for that date, like, let's have this conversation and all this other stuff. So anyways, but it's like that odd, it's almost like dating, right? It's like you go up and you're desperate for the significant
also,
other.
You're confident in your abilities, right? It's also having confidence in what you do. And honestly, it's mutual respect that you did that. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't just about you and saving money. You're like, I'm not, it's.
Yeah. I didn't want to waste their time either.
Yeah.
Like, why waste time with a guy like me where I walk in the door and 5 minutes in, I'm like,
the funniest thing, she went back to somebody, right? She's like, you're not going to believe. And they said, really? You did?
Yeah.
And they're like, wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I like that. I respect that.
Yeah.
That's what they said, right?
Totally.
You didn't capitulate.
Nope.
Which we see too much of that today, but we won't go there.
Talk to me about solution selling versus hypothesis selling. So this is the big shift that I'm seeing.
I mean, should we solution sell anymore, John? And people told me that's not a thing anymore.
Well, well, the book of the month club. I mean, people, they have their, whatever your favorite new method, right? But, solution, I grew up at Xerox, they invented solution selling back in the 70s and 80s. And, for everybody listening, it's obviously just asking before product pitching or after product. It was just ask me some questions and then deliver a solution based on my needs. Now we've moved into this world of, a lot of people, and I talk about it too, and I suggest in some ways doing this, but hypothesis selling. So instead of me walking in and saying, hey, Vince, tell me about your problems, tell me about your priorities, help me, what keeps you up at night, all that bullshit. I walk in and I'm like, hey, Vince, you know what? I'm dealing with a lot of executives like you in this space, and walking into the end of this year and early next year, some of the things that are in their top of their head are X, Y, and Z. And based on what my research is, I threw in your 10K and annual report, my hunch is that you're having issues here, here, and here. Am I on the right path? So coming in with a hypothesis and anchoring on something for them to expand on versus open-ended question. Let's see where this goes. Like, where are you?
Can't you do both?
Yep.
Can't you do both?
Yep.
Can't you have a hypothesis and solution sell?
Well, I guess the question is chicken and the egg, right? Which comes first? Do you do solution selling and then come up with your hypothesis, or do you lead with a hypothesis?
If I'm selling industry or vertical wise,
yep,
I think the hypothesis works really well. Here's what we're seeing in your industry, X, Y, and Z. I assume you're seeing something similar. Am I correct? Yes, we are. So I think you can anchor to that. If you have industry or vertical expertise and you see repeat stuff, matter of fact, then you're positioning yourself as the expert. That makes a lot of sense. And then once you figure out what they agree to, then you start the solution sell. But it comes down to what you said in the beginning, right? Like, isn't everything just about what's their need? What do they need? Like, come on, man. We're overcomplicating sales again. People are only going to buy, and more so today than ever before, something that they need, feels it's going to bring them value, right? Because what is it? What's the right number? 70, 80% of buyers are so better informed on your product, your offering, your solution, your competitors, all of the blah, 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 right? And it's true, right? All they got to do is go to ChatGPT and tell me about John Barrows and how he's different than other folks that do what John does, right?
100%. That's why I tell reps, if you don't think you're in trouble, do that exact thing. Pretend like you're a potential customer of your product and go in and say, I'm a CEO, I'm a VP of sales of a 50-person sales team, 20 SDRs, 30 AEs. I'm looking at the JV sales training for prospecting. Tell me what I need to know. How does he compare against the other 3 vendors on G2? And when you realize in a 5-minute conversation, you get more value than some dipshit kid that's going to ask you bank questions and then reschedule a meeting 3 weeks later for their AE to ask you the same stupid questions and then wait another 2 weeks for the SE to come in and have the conversation. You realize how much trouble we're in.
I think to go back to your question, one more point I'd make on that. If you're selling a solution that's not a well-known solution, like maybe you're the first to sell what you're selling, I think you have to lead with a hypothesis, right? You have to paint this picture of, you may not realize it, but here's the problem that you have. And here's what it could lead to today, tomorrow, the next day, right? So standing on the soapbox and kind of preaching, right? It's a aspirational sale, it's called. So if you're selling an aspirational sale, I think you have to lead that way. How can you sell a solution where they don't even see the problem yet, right?
Yeah. So let's talk about the book. Why'd you write it? Like, why writing a book is a pain in the ass across the board. You usually don't make any money doing it. So it's usually a labor of love. Why did you decide to write this book? And then let's talk about what's in the book.
I always need to be doing something or I'm bothering people, typically in my house. So I had to do that. I had this idea for red zone selling about 8 years. And I talked about this framework at a couple of different presentations. And I've kind of used this framework for most of my career in one way or another. And so fast forward to February this past year, I was speaking to a coach I was using at the time. And I just came out of a business that wasn't successful last year. And again, I needed something to do. And I said, hey, I've got this idea for this book. And I said, you got to be honest with me. I know I'm paying you money, but I don't want you to tell me, what I want to hear. And I said it and there was silence. And I'm like, oh shit, he's going to give me that. Oh, let me think about it. He said, I think it's brilliant. I think you should do it. I have a self-publisher you can use. I said, whoa, no, you got to give me more than that. And he went into it. He said, one, it's a framework. It's not a methodology. It's not a process. It sits on top of that. It's independent. It's not theory. It's practical. He said, two, your analogy to sports and specifically football. People that sell typically love sports. They love to compete. It's more than sports, right? So once I kind of got that initial, like, okay, that gives me a little confidence, I started putting together the outline to this thing. And quite frankly, what made me pull the trigger on it, I found a self-publisher that gave me a framework to be able to put my thoughts down, to really give it the solid outline, as you know, to write the book. It's not, you don't write chapter after chapter. You have to get the framework. And I have to be honest with you, the most surprising thing when I was writing the book was like how easy that was, how easy that came to me. I was like, whoa, this is bizarre. I was sitting on my porch and I'm like flying through you had to do 9 chapters and 3 subtopics for each chapter. And not only was that, I started, this would be a cool story to tell about Tom Brady on this scene. And this would be a cool story to tell about this player and that player. And to match up to the chapters, like, holy shit, this is pretty cool. But also, John, for me, I want a calling card. And the other important thing for me is like, I want a legacy, man. Like, I think I've done a lot of great things and led a lot of great teams and had a lot of success, but like, this is my baby now. You know what I mean? Like Red Zone, I want to be my brand, right? Like they may not remember my name, but I hope this eventually becomes something that people remember. Like that guy thought of it in a practical way that I think most sellers will get and find some use in. And that's why I wrote it for. It's for the people that aspire to be the 1%.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
That's who it's for.
Nice. So let's talk through the framework, right?
Is that too much selling, by the way?
What's that?
Was that too much selling?
No, not at all. No, hey, look, I say for me, I do this 10-60-30 thing where it's 10%. Like when somebody asks me, John, you can train all these people, you train us all in the same shit. How can we differentiate? And my answer is always 10-60-30. I go 10% of you in this room are going to take what I tell you and execute at the highest level because that's the type of people you are. 60% of you in this room are going to do something different because it's easy and it makes sense. And 30% of you ain't going to do shit different. So the question isn't how many people can I train? The question is what percentage you want to be in. And where you say you're up for that top 10%, like that top 1%, I'm actually for the upper end of the middle 60%. 10% to me is always going to be the 10%. Like you're always going to get value out of anything and you're always going to want to get better. I don't even know if I would put myself in the top 1-2% type of sales reps. I'm a practitioner. I'm a scientist, but I'm not the Jeff Hoffmans of the world. I'm not that guy. Right. On the other hand, the bottom 30% piss off. Like I don't give a shit about the bottom 30%. And the reason is because they don't care either.
Yeah, they don't.
Right. The one I have a little bit of empathy for is the middle. There's the bottom part of that 60%. The ones who are just the B players and just want to do their job and just show up. Unfortunately, with AI right now, I think they're irrelevant and they just don't know it yet. That's the sad part. But it's that top end of that 60% for me that I'm like, if you care, if you care, you don't have to be great, but if you give a shit, I'll give you everything I got to get you to this next level where you can go for the 1% thing, but I'm not going to care if you don't. So going back to 1%, no, it goes back to knowing your audience, right? Like that's who you want to speak to. Enterprise. I'm also not enterprise for the most part. Like I swung and failed hard with the enterprise approach. I'm more of a mid-market kid. Like not a ton of volume. I can't do SMB because I don't understand why sales in SMB isn't really a thing. I think. I'm sorry to offend anybody who's in that, but it's a lot more transactional. It's a lot more, all right, cool, let's go. So the top of the funnel does matter at those levels. So I don't think you're pitching at all because you are who you're focusing on. And those are the people who hopefully listen.
And I think it's coming through. I'm passionate about it, right? You can't write a book unless you're really passionate about that. Well, actually you can write a book. You just go to ChatGPT and you say, John Barrows is, write a book that John would write, and they'll literally write a book for you for real.
I know that's actually the story. Cause I was like, what am I going to write? Cause a real book. No, well, not that my children's book isn't a real book, but, I was like, what am I going to write? And what I realized was when I started the process of writing what I would think would be frameworks and these type of things, that's like round when ChatGPT came out. And I'm like, this is going to be irrelevant before I put it out there, like before I'm even done with it. So what I'm actually going to write my book, it's called, I think the title is going to be My Sales Story and Everything I've Learned Along the Way. And it's literally just going to be story after story after story.
People love stories,
right? Because that's something ChatGPT can't take away from me. Like it doesn't know all those stories.
And it's your stories.
They're mine, right? So that's the thing that nobody can go into ChatGPT and say, tell me all the stories that John had throughout his entire life and how they apply to sales. Like that's the story I can.
And that was what was important to me to make sure I sprinkled in there is that like they didn't just want plays and situations. Of course they did. It's very valuable.
Sure.
But I talk about like, I truly ran into this and here's what we did and here's what the result was. And like, that was the fun part about it. It's kind of like going back, looking back at my past and my history and picking out the good stuff and the bad stuff that happened. And this is what, when you write, it forces all these things to come out, as you know, and it's a good, whether you want to publish your book or not, like I encourage everybody to put their thoughts down on the old paper, whether it's typing or writing, because it's like, man, it's so liberating.
It's
holy shit.
And it's different than speaking into a dictation app, right? Because it forces you to think about what you're writing as opposed to just throwing up and writing, quote unquote. So I think that the art of writing, like, no, that's dumb, scratch, write that. No, that didn't make any sense. That doesn't tie to this, right? All that wires your brain in a certain way too. So let's talk about the framework, right? So you get red zone. It's funny, you went to U Maryland and I did too. And we have a very similar arc because I didn't go for broadcasting, but I was an assistant sports marketing director. And so I would set up for the games at Bird Stadium. I'd break them down. I was the one up in the booth, like, when Keith Booth, had that, I put his name up in lights and all that stuff. And I started the red zone. So I drew a picture of the Terp with this cape on in the red zone, and it was all about this, and there was the student section and stuff. So talk to me about, we all know, most people know obviously what the red zone is in football. It's that's the last 20 yards right there, right? So but you have this yellow zone, green zone, red zone. So walk us through that framework a little bit.
Yeah. So I break the football field down. If you're looking at a football peak, to give you a visual out there, you've got the yellow zone, which, think about it, it's probably from your defending goal line going to like the 40. Then you've got the green zone, which is the middle section of the field. And then we all know what the red zone is. It's where you strike. And by the way, as I started going through this zones and what plays you run in these different zones, there's a couple of NFL stats that really came out at me that was really in parallel to sales. Did you know over the last 12, 13 years in the NFL, 74% of touchdowns are scored in the red zone? 74%. Now, if you think of enterprise sales, about 80% or greater are closed in your last stage, right? So there's a lot of parallels with why in football, the quarterback tries to move the football down the field as close to the goal line as possible because he wants to increase their team's chances of scoring a touchdown. It's the same thing in sales, why we're doing the things necessary to get the decision all the way down the path and making sure we're checking and calling the right plays in the right situation. And that's what it really is about. It's like, it's not just having a process and following the process. It's being situationally aware. All right. Like, for example, it always comes back in football and in sports in general and sales of, you got to get the basics right first.
Yep.
People always ask me, like, they want a silver bullet. I'm like, there's no silver bullets, dude. I'll give you an example. When we were at customer, our close rate was shrinking and our top of pipe was shrinking. So I knew we weren't getting more opportunities. So what do we need to do? We need to increase our probability of closing the deals that we have. So we did some funnel analysis. And one of the things we found out is we were losing more than we should have late stage deals. We eventually pinpointed it to because we weren't bringing the IT leader in the process in early. They were getting involved in the deal late. They didn't plan for it. So therefore they didn't feel involved. They couldn't plan for it. They've killed the deal. So you know what we did? We're so brilliant. We pulled in IT early in the discovery calls and invited them to the party. And guess what happened? We went from 21% to 43%. That's a small little thing, but that's what happens in sales. What I want people to know out there, it's like, you don't need to do big things. You don't need to change your process, your methodology, or any of that. You just need to make fine little changes and be honest with where you're challenged, right? And that's what if you ask me the question, like, what do you want people to take away from this? So if like when you do a sales training, if someone walks away with 1 or 2 nuggets that like is just like, wow, I could do that today. That's what I want, because I want the level of effort. The hard thing in training sometimes is if the salesperson feels that the level of effort for me to implement what I was just told is too hard, they're not going to do it. And these are common sense type things that gives you the ability to say, if I'm in this situation, I need to recognize what's happening, and the play could be this, or maybe it makes you think about a different play that you might want to have. So that's what it is. It's just like, think about it again. I use the Patrick Mahomes or Tom Brady, right? Because it also is mental toughness. Is like, be aware where you are and call the right play at that time and be ready to audible.
Well, that's where like Bill Belichick, so Patriots fan here, loud and proud. We're coming back this year. We were terrible the past few years, but whatever.
Take what the defense gives you,
right? But yes, and what his whole thing, Belichick, was do your job, and that it was literally that simple. It's like just follow the process. And one of the most beautiful examples of that was a Gray. Like he was a running back, and I forget what his name was, but his last name was Gray. He was this rookie running back, right? And he comes in the game and he scores like 5 touchdowns, running touchdowns. And he was like top of the like shit, right? Literally made the cover of Sports Illustrated that week. Like it was like, whoa, holy shit, right? 5 touchdowns, right? And he was 15 minutes late to practice on Monday or on Tuesday when they came back to practice. Belichick benched his ass. Went and got Blunt from the Pittsburgh Steelers, put Blunt in the next game, and Blunt scored 4 touchdowns in the same system. And he basically, and that kid never played again.
He just did his job, man.
The kid never, he was like, you're not special. Okay. It's the system. And if you play the system, it tends to work. And I go back to that being, it really is that. So I guess my question for you is like the little things matter, right? And so you make these little tweaks, but I believe we've gotten so far away from fundamentals that
for sure.
I think most organizations don't have a foundation to tweak because they're tweaking on a house of cards, and that those cards aren't making the difference. So how do you suggest organizations right now kind of take a step back and go, is our foundation sound? And because that, like, to me, if you think of the analogy of a house, right, it's like, well, fuck, do I got to rip this whole thing down to build a new foundation here? How do you look at people who are kind of in that shitty yellow zone, if you will, that they're not making any progress, they're basically treading water, and it's because they've built a house of cards?
I agree. I think it's time to evaluate that and be honest about it. I think the biggest challenge we have as sellers today is who I forgot what you were talking about. Somebody's talking about the indecision. I think more deals are stalling now. I think you can get deals started and you can have conversations, but it's the stalling. And I agree with you. I think it's all the foundations, and it starts with first what we talked about early, the top of the podcast of like, what does fit look like at our company? So what is your sales playbook needs to be something that's easy for a salesperson to digest. There's a sales playbook for the sellers. Do you know what I'm saying? Like there's a sales playbook that your CRO has, but then there's a sales playbook a la Red Zone that's for the sellers to be able to sell. So literally from this framework, I could craft an entire sales process for somebody that's just around the foundation of fundamentals. I'm not a genius. I haven't rediscovered what sales is, but I know it works and what doesn't, and it hasn't changed over 500 years. Do you know what I'm saying? Like starts with, okay, who is this person and do they need this thing? And then what do we need to do to make it work for us and follow on the path? And to me, again, the biggest challenge for sellers out there is that, yeah, Vince, whatever, but my deals are slowing down. They're stalling. I'm getting ghosted. I'm getting this. Okay. So why aren't we including, injecting, objection handling? Like instead of waiting for it to happen, if it's stalling, stop acting like my next step is this. It's like, no, your next step is nothing. You have nothing. It's gone. So now you got to start from scratch. What would you do if you'd start from scratch? And I think that's the problem. It's gotten too scientific, to your point before, too much medic or your process. It's like, that's cool, but my deal stalled. So guess what? Sending the reminder email or top of the, whatever it is. No. How about a text to saying, is everything okay? And start from zero again, right? Because you already lost it. And what I say in enterprise sales, you probably lose your deal 3 or 4 times in enterprise sales before you win it. You know what I mean? That you might get ghosted for a month. You lost it. What are you going to do to gain back? Right. So I think yes, foundation needs to be looked at. I think simplifying your playbook for the sellers is very important. Again, is it digestible to them? Will they follow it? Do they believe in it?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah. And I mean, look, I'm a keep it simple, stupid guy that I always have been. Like, you make it too complicated for me. This is why, like, all due respect to Miller Hyman and shit. But as soon as I saw Miller Hyman, I was like, nope, never going to fucking do this. Like, there's just no way I'm going to fill out this blue sheet for every account that I have. Like, it's just not going to happen. Sorry. Like, I'm sure it gives me great insights and it helps me frame my whole process around this, but I don't have the patience.
9 out of 10 people won't do it either unless it was an absolute requirement.
Well,
right?
That's carrot stick, right? So I find that the stick is the forced methodology. The carrot is like, okay, well, what's in it for me? Like, if I do this, and that's why, like, I've always gravitated towards my training is started very tactical. It was like, just do this to your point of like, get that one nugget. Because if I can get that one nugget, that kid to be like, ooh, that worked. It opens up their eyes to maybe be open to some other stuff.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
You're really good at communicating to salespeople, right? Mm-hmm. You're authentic.
Try.
They like you. They respond to you. When you're speaking to a sales leader or rev ops leader about coming in to do some training, how often do you get involved with actual sellers at that company? How often are they involved in the, should we bring John in, or what kind of training do we need? Is that ever part of your process or their process?
Rare that they offer it. I usually say, let me talk to a couple reps before we get started here, because I need to hear from them what they're dealing with. And usually I like to try to talk to the top reps to see, because I need their buy-in so that they don't sit in the back of the room and check out because they know that most training sucks. But, I don't do extensive, like one-on-ones and meetings and, because I'm not enterprise. So my deals aren't $3, $5, $1 million to justify that. But I'll take 2-3 calls with some top, leaders, and there's a whole form I have them fill out. But yeah, it's important for me to, well, here's an example. Like when we do there's 2 frameworks that I use, one for prospecting and one for negotiations. And we do the prep so that I have a baseline to compare it to. I used to just have the managers do that so I could get their perspective. Now I'm like, no. I want your rep to give me that baseline structure of what they would put in there so that I can see from their perspective what they think great looks like, especially your top reps. So I can now, get their buy-in and use that as a comparison.
Yeah. And that's what I'm trying to get at. Like this book is written for the seller, though if I'm trying to do a workshop or put together plays for the team, you need to go where how you're going to get paid, right? But where I'm looking for the cred, where I want people to say like, shit, this book is good. It's useful. I want top sellers to say like, and I, when you write a book, you don't know. The scariest thing is, I ask for a lot of feedback from people, man. And like, is it coming? And knock on wood. I know the day is coming when someone's going to say, or whatever it is. But there was one person, John, that reached out to me. I gave him the PDF early on, and it was a Saturday. I remember it. He sent me back this long, thoughtful email about what he really loved about the book. And I'm like, almost in tears. I'm like, holy shit. Cause I didn't know, I've read it so many times. I'm like, I don't even know what to make of it anymore. It was at that point. And this is one of those 1%ers, ICs. And he got it. And I was like, okay. Whew. That's all I needed to make sure.
I was going to say, to me, that makes all the hard work, all the travel for me when I used to do it, those type of things worth it. When that one kid can unsolicited hit you back and say, holy shit, man, like you changed my entire perspective. Like that's what happened.
You do the training, and then after training, you're getting hit by people. You're like, this is why I do it. Yep. And I get paid.
Yep. And that's like, and again, going back to the 1%ers, I remember sitting in the class with Jeff Hoffman, like it was a public workshop. And I remember I was king shit. We were the fastest growing company in Massachusetts. I was kicking the ever living shit out of all my competition. And I wasn't really that good. I just had a really strong work ethic. You know what I mean? Like I worked harder than everybody else. And so but I thought my shit didn't stink. And then I sat there and I watched Jeff and I was like, oh,
you felt small, didn't you?
Oh, I felt so insignificant as far as my skills because I saw what sales greatness looked like. And I was like, okay, I have, and the light bulb went off for me.
I'll tell you though, there's not a day that goes by, I'm being completely honest, that I don't feel like I don't know shit.
Oh, man.
I mean? No. And isn't it funny? Like, I'm older than you and someone's younger than whatever. I don't care what age it is and how much success you have. If you don't feel that, then there's something wrong with you, you know? And I know people worry about that. Like they're afraid to write something or do something because they don't know. Like nobody knows anything. We're all experimenting, right?
That's the big farce about adult, right? When you're a kid, you're like, oh man, these adults got it figured out. And then when you become an adult, you're like, wait a minute, fucking nobody has a clue what they're doing.
They don't.
Like,
you don't have the answers you think you do.
I'm sure you have the same thing. Like you've met executives of huge organizations and stuff like that. And after you get it, like you probably intimidated when you walk in the room, you're like, this person's like multi-billionaire and holy shit, they must know. And then you meet them and like 10 minutes into the conversation, you're like, wait a minute.
Emperor has no clothes, right?
Yeah, like you're not that smart. You're not, you were fortunate, you were driven, you know, and you did some really good things, but you're not some Mensa genius here that got you to this level. Like I could be you. And I think that's the thing I always try to get kids, like, you know, when you're talking to an executive, realize that when you're at the grocery store, do yourself a favor, just turn around and look in line. Because I almost guarantee that mother, that father who's got 2 or 3 kids hanging all over them and all disheveled and they're trying to get their credit. But I almost guarantee that's an executive somewhere. You know what I mean? That you're scared to talk to. So,
and that's a good lesson for people. I think out of everything we talked about is quite frankly is like, you're an expert in what you do, man. Believe it, learn it, continue to learn the craft. And the other thing to me is like I started off with, I didn't pick a career in sales. I think sales picked me, but I learned to love it. And I think sales is like choosing golf as a sport. You can play golf until the day you die, just about. So if you're going to choose a career, it's a career you literally could do until the day you can't do anything anymore. And there's not a lot of occupations you can say that. And there's ageism in the workplace. But again, if you're a closer or you're a great sales leader, nobody cares you're 85 years. Well,
nope. Yeah. Well,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or 23 if you can prove it, right? So that's the beautiful thing is that it's ages.
And that's the other analogy to golf there is that I always tell people like sales is like golf. Like you can always get better. Golf, you can't shoot a 0.
You'll never master it, right? You can always try, but you'll never
always
master it.
That tweak. There's always that thing.
There's always the one good hit that keeps you back.
Right. Exactly. And that's that one big deal that you focus it right. And all that shit. So
the timely question that you asked and you're like, shit, that was awesome. You know?
Exactly. Awesome. Well, I think we could, talk sales all day long on this one, Vince, but let's give people some insights on where they can find the book, where they can find more about you, what you're doing these days. Cause again, I think, for me, my audience is that they always want to get better. Right. And, there is the enterprise sellers out there. They're looking at things right now, freaking the fuck out based on what's happening with AI and everything else. So this is hopefully something that'll give them those few nuggets to get to that next level. So where can people find out more info?
You can find me, please connect on LinkedIn, Vince Beese on LinkedIn. I think I'm the only Vince Beese on LinkedIn, so there's not going to be any trouble with that. And then Red Zone Selling comes out on Amazon. I think by the time your folks listen to this, which is August 12th, so you can get the Kindle version and the paperback version. And then there's redzoneselling.co as well, .co, not com. So
gotcha. Yeah. Everybody else who's listening, we're going to put it in the show notes, but last name Beese, even though it sounds like Beese, right?
Sounds like Reese. A lot of people will say Reese.
Beese. Yeah.
It's a Beese, easy like Beese.
Easy like Sunday morning. All right, my friend. Well, thank you very much for the conversation. I really enjoyed it. And hopefully
awesome,
people go
John.
out and pick up this book.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Everybody, hopefully you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. And like I always say at all the end of all these podcasts, go out there and make somebody smile today, because no matter how bad your day's going or how bad you think it went, if you make somebody smile, you know you had a good day, and the world needs a lot more of that right now. So thank you all very much, and I will see you on the other side. Hey, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. With your support and our incredible guests, we're one of the top sales podcasts out there right now, and I can't thank you enough. Now, to keep the momentum going, it would mean the world to me if you could go and leave a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform and share some of your favorite episodes with your network. Also, I am super excited to be launching my new newsletter, where I'll be sharing everything I know and everything I'm learning along the way while I'm out there selling every day just like you. Go to jbarrows.com/newsletter to sign up today. Let's all level up and make this happen together.